The energy surrounding Sagittarius right now is unlike anything you have felt in recent months. There is a quickening in the air, a sense that the final stretch of this month carries within it the seeds of changes that could touch every corner of your life. Not in a destructive way, not in a way that tears things apart, but in a way that rearranges the pieces, that shifts the angles, that shows you familiar things from a perspective you did not have before. If you have been feeling like something is building, like the pressure behind your chest has been increasing day by day with no clear explanation, then what you are sensing is real. The changes coming later this month are not random. They are responses to the inner work you have been doing, whether you realized you were doing it or not. And here are 10 of them that Sagittarius should be aware of. Change 1. The first change has to do with the way you experience your mornings. This might seem small, but for Sagittarius, mornings have always been complicated. You are not naturally a creature of routine, and the early hours often feel like a negotiation between the person you think you should be and the person you actually are. But later this month, something in that dynamic may begin to shift. You might wake up with a clarity that was not there before, a sense of purpose that does not require coffee or willpower to access. Not every morning, not dramatically, but enough to notice that the fog you have been waking into for months or even years is starting to lift. This is not about discipline or productivity hacks. This is about alignment. When your inner life begins to match your outer actions, the mornings change because you are no longer waking up into a life that feels misaligned. You are waking up into something that feels like it was built for you, and that feeling, even in small doses, has the power to transform the entire arc of your day. Pay attention to how you feel in the first few minutes of waking. That window, before the world rushes in with its demands and distractions, is where the change will first make itself known. It is subtle, it is quiet, but it is the foundation upon which everything else this month is built. Change 2. The second change involves a relationship that has been stuck in a pattern you both know is not working. This is not about endings, not necessarily. It is about a crack appearing in the wall that has been standing between you and someone you care about. A wall built from assumptions, from old hurts, from the accumulation of things left unsaid that have hardened into something that feels permanent. But later this month, the energy around that relationship may soften just enough for a new kind of conversation to become possible. Not a big dramatic confrontation, not a tearful breakthrough, but a moment of honesty that slips through before either of you has time to put the defenses back up. And if you catch that moment, if you hold it gently instead of grabbing it with the force of everything you have been wanting to say, it could open a door that both of you thought was permanently closed. Sagittarius, your instinct in these moments is to charge forward, to say everything at once, to let the fire burn through all the layers in a single blast. But this change requires a different approach. It requires patience. It requires listening more than speaking. It requires the kind of vulnerability that does not come easily to your sign but that produces results no amount of boldness ever could. Change 3. The third change is financial, but not in the way you might expect. This is not about a windfall or a loss. It is about a shift in your awareness around money that could have lasting effects on how you manage your resources moving forward. You may begin to see connections between your spending habits and your emotional states that were invisible to you before. The purchases you make when you are anxious, the generosity that increases when you are trying to avoid a feeling, the way money flows out of your life in patterns that mirror the patterns of your inner world. This awareness is not about guilt or restriction. It is about power. Because once you see the pattern, you can choose whether to follow it or break it. And for Sagittarius, who tends to approach money with a mix of faith and avoidance, this new clarity could be the beginning of a healthier, more intentional relationship with abundance. The change here is not about having more. It is about understanding more. About seeing money not as a separate category of life, but as an extension of your energy, your values, your priorities. And when you begin to treat it that way, when you begin to direct your resources with the same intentionality you bring to your relationships and your personal growth, the effect is transformative. Change 4. The fourth change touches your physical body in ways that you may or may not be expecting. Later this month, you might notice shifts in your energy levels, your appetite, your physical comfort in ways that do not have an obvious external cause. Your body is responding to the internal changes you are undergoing, and it is doing so in its own language. A language of sensation, of fatigue, of unexpected bursts of vitality, of cravings that seem to come from nowhere. Do not dismiss these signals. Your body is not separate from your spiritual growth. It is the ground where that growth takes root. And when the ground shifts, the body feels it first. You might feel called to move differently, to eat differently, to rest differently than you have been. Follow those impulses with curiosity rather than judgment. Your body knows things your mind does not. It has been carrying the weight of your evolution in ways you may not have acknowledged, and later this month, it is asking for your attention. Not your control, not your criticism, your attention, your willingness to listen and respond with kindness. Change 5. The fifth change has to do with a creative project or idea that has been sitting in the back of your mind, unfinished and unattended, waiting for something you could not name. Later this month, the missing piece may arrive. Not in a flash of inspiration, but in a quiet realization that the obstacle you thought was blocking you was never really there. It was a story you told yourself about why you could not finish, why you were not ready, why the timing was not right. And the energy of this month has a way of dissolving those stories, not violently but gently, the way morning light dissolves a shadow without ever touching it. Sagittarius carries so many unfinished things. Projects started with passion and abandoned when the initial excitement faded. Ideas that seemed brilliant at 2 in the morning but felt impossible by noon. This change is not about finishing all of them. It is about recognizing which one matters. Which one has been calling to you not because it is exciting but because it is necessary. And once you identify that one thing, once you give it your focused attention, the momentum that builds may surprise you. If what you're hearing feels accurate, imagine what could happen if you applied this energy intentionally for 21 consecutive days. That's exactly what the 21-day program in the pinned comment is built for. Daily guidance, focused direction, and real momentum. If you're tired of staying in the same cycle, this is your structure. Change 6. The sixth change is social, and it may arrive in a form that catches you off guard. Someone you have not heard from in a long time may reach out, or you may feel an inexplicable urge to contact someone from your past, not out of nostalgia but out of a sense that there is unfinished business that needs attention. This does not necessarily mean the person will re-enter your life in a significant way. It might be a single conversation that provides a piece of closure you did not realize you needed. It might be a brief exchange that reminds you of who you were at a particular point in your journey and helps you appreciate how far you have come since then. Sagittarius does not look back often. Your eyes are almost always fixed on the horizon. But this month, the past may tap you on the shoulder, not to pull you backward, but to hand you something you left behind. Something that belongs to the version of you that is emerging right now. Be open to it. Not every message from the past is a trap or a regression. Sometimes the past returns what it borrowed at exactly the moment you need it most. Change 7. The seventh change involves a boundary you have been afraid to set. There is a situation in your life, a dynamic, a pattern, an arrangement that you have been tolerating because the alternative felt too disruptive, too confrontational, too risky. But later this month, the cost of not setting that boundary may become clearer than the cost of setting it. And in that moment of clarity, you may find the words you have been searching for. Not aggressive words, not combative words, but clear, honest, steady words that draw a line between what you will accept and what you will not. For Sagittarius, who values freedom above almost everything, the inability to set a boundary is a paradox. Because every boundary you fail to set is a piece of freedom you silently surrender. And later this month, you may finally see that equation clearly enough to act on it. The boundary you set does not have to be permanent. It does not have to be perfect. Just has to be honest. And honesty for your sign is never a problem. The challenge has never been knowing your truth. The challenge has been speaking it in situations where speaking it comes with consequences you would rather avoid. But this month, the consequences of silence are beginning to outweigh the consequences of speech. And that shift in the balance is all the courage you need. Change 8. The eighth change has to do with the way you think about the future. Sagittarius is always looking ahead, always planning, always imagining what comes next. But later this month, the future may begin to feel less like a destination and more like a direction. Less like a fixed point you are trying to reach and more like a current you are being carried by. This shift in perspective is subtle, but it is profound. Because when the future is a destination, you are always measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that gap generates anxiety, impatience, dissatisfaction. But when the future is a direction, there is no gap. There is only movement. Only the feeling of being in motion towards something that is unfolding in real time, something that responds to your choices and adjusts its shape to match who you are becoming. This change in how you hold the future can bring an enormous sense of relief to a sign that has spent its entire life in pursuit. Not because the pursuit is over, but because the pursuit is no longer something you do. It is something you are. You are not chasing the future, Sagittarius. You are becoming it one moment at a time. Some people watch. Others transform. If you want to be in the second group, the 21-day guide in the pinned comment gives you a clear step-by-step process aligned with your sign. This isn't about waiting. It's about moving. Change 9. The 9th change is one of the most intimate. It involves the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. The inner dialogue, the running commentary, the voice in your head that narrates your life, evaluates your choices, and judges your progress. Later this month, you may notice that voice changing its tone. Not dramatically, not overnight, but enough to catch your attention. Where it once was harsh, it may begin to soften. Where it once demanded perfection, it may begin to offer grace. Where it once compared you to everyone you know and found you lacking, it may begin to whisper, "You are doing better than you think." This change in your inner voice is not something you need to manufacture or force. It is a natural byproduct of the growth that is already underway. When you begin to live in greater alignment with your truth, the inner critic loses its ammunition. The gap between who you are and who you think you should be narrows, and the voice that used to fill that gap with criticism finds itself with less and less to say. Pay attention to this shift. It is one of the most reliable indicators that genuine transformation is taking hold, because the way you speak to yourself determines the quality of every experience you have. And when that inner conversation changes, everything else changes with it. Change 10. The 10th and final change is the one that encompasses all the others. It is a growing sense of readiness. Not readiness for something specific. Not readiness for a particular event or outcome or milestone. But a general, pervasive, unmistakable feeling that you are ready. Ready for what is next, whatever it turns out to be. Ready to receive what is coming, even if you do not know its shape. Ready to let go of what needs to leave and embrace what needs to arrive. This readiness is not confidence in the traditional sense. It is not the absence of fear or the presence of certainty. It is something quieter and more durable than both. It is the feeling of having done enough inner work, accumulated enough wisdom, shed enough old skins, to stand at the edge of the unknown and feel not terror but curiosity. Not dread but anticipation. Not the need to control what happens next but the willingness to let it unfold. For Sagittarius, this kind of readiness is rare. Because your sign is so accustomed to being the one who charges ahead, who creates the future through sheer force of will, that the idea of simply being ready, of standing still and letting the future come to you, feels almost foreign. But that is exactly what this final change is asking of you. To stop pushing, to stop forcing, to stop running, and to simply stand open and ready in the fullness of who you are. The changes coming later this month are not threats, Sagittarius. They are invitations. Every single one of them is asking you to become more of who you already are. To stop hiding behind the roles and the habits and the stories that have kept you comfortable, but not truly alive. This month is not about surviving. It is about arriving. Arriving at a place inside yourself that has been waiting for you since long before you knew it existed. And now that you are here, now that you can feel the ground shifting beneath your feet and the air changing around you, the only thing left to do is trust. Trust the changes. Trust yourself. And trust that the Sagittarius who emerges on the other side of this month will be someone worth becoming. You have two options after this video. Close it and hope things shift, or decide that the next 21 days will be different. If you choose the second, the structured 21-day transformation aligned with your sign is waiting in the pinned comment. The energy is already moving, the only question is whether you are.